Hello, OT friends, and welcome to the Uncommon OT series. I'm Patricia and I'm your host, a Filipino-American, native New Yorker, currently based in Los Angeles, bulldog mama, and an uncommon occupational therapist myself for the past 22 years. On this podcast, you will hear me proudly feature the unique careers of occupational therapy practitioners working in non-traditional and role-emerging practice areas, settings where OT is uncommon. I invite you to receive a dose of OT inspiration, to learn, to think outside of the box, and to be energized and motivated to follow in these unconventional paths. Happy listening! Before we begin this episode, I want to extend a special thanks to Picmonic, our sponsor. If you are an OT or OTA student looking for an excellent learning resource and study aid, Picmonic might be for you. Whether you're studying for your classes or getting ready for the NBCOT exam, it is a visual mnemonic learning tool that has been research proven to increase retention and help students ace their exams. It uses audio-visual learning and intelligence-based repetition algorithms to help with long-term retention while studying. If you're interested in trying it for yourself, sign up today using the link in the show notes or using the code TRANSITIONSOT to score a discount of 20% off your Picmonic membership. Welcome back, OT friends. Today, I'd like to welcome to the podcast Gina Taylor. Gina is an occupational therapist who specializes in hippotherapy. Welcome to the podcast, Gina.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm thrilled to hear and to delve more into your specialty. And I'd love for you to start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. As you kicked off here, I am an occupational therapist. The area that I specialize in is hippotherapy, which means that we are incorporating horses and the movement specifically of the horse into our client's plan of care. And it kind of has been a long career trajectory for me because my undergraduate degree is in equine studies. And I knew that this was an area of practice that was really important to me. So it has been definitely part of my OT existence since the beginning. And I've been able to travel around the world and teach other occupational therapists about using hippotherapy. So it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Oh, fantastic. I'm curious how you bridged the two. You were an equine therapist, or you've majored in equine studies prior to becoming an occupational therapist, or did OT come in first?
Yeah, no. So I was a horse person first. I was, one of those horse crazy kids. I was in 4-H. And when I said I want to go to college for horses, my parents didn't say, yeah, right, get a real job. They said, we support you and I'm sure you'll make something out of it. And then I got involved in adaptive horseback riding, which is riding lessons for people with disabilities. And so I got to see the sport and recreation side of things. And then I was introduced to the medical side. And so that's working with PT, OT, speech, or mental health. And then I really felt like I didn't have all the tools in the toolbox that I wanted. And so I was like, I don't want to be a speech language pathologist because I don't want to work in the mouth, which is ironic given all the feeding I've done in early intervention. And then I was like, it's PT or OT. And I just kind of said, I like the OT's clients better. So I'm going to go to OT school like that. I did not put any thought, research, or anything into it. And then when I got into OT school, I was like, this is perfect for me. It's so holistic. It's so me. So the horse part came first, but then I just was able, like, as my notebooks from grad school are just scribbled all over with like, oh, this is why it works. This is why this happens. Like all these connections were made.
Oh, wow. Well, it sounds like it was such a natural sort of progression and that you're kind of meant to be this.
Yeah.
Does that sound true?
It sounds so true. It was like I was one of those like unicorns who just knew like what it was I wanted to do. It was like, okay. And it was just like a stepping stone. It was a stepping path. It was like, we do this and then we do this and then we do this and then we do this. I wouldn't change it. It's worked out very well.
Well, I'm glad you're here to tell us all about, your journey. But what motivated you to contribute to my podcast series here?
Yeah, well, I think helping other occupational therapy providers understand what it is to work in a unique setting and the good, the bad, the ugly, the fun, the exciting. And horses are definitely a big part of that specialty. And with the growing nature-based occupational therapy side of things, there's more and more people who are excited about getting their clients outdoors. And a lot of times animals end up being part of that. So we have the horses that we work with, we have therapy goats. So, that all kind of comes together.
Ah, I want to hear more about the horses and the goats in a second, that's for sure. But also, echo what you're saying about nature-based OT and how that's becoming really a fun and interesting, setting for OTs to practice in. I've interviewed a few,
Hmm.
podcast guests and uncommon OTs who are just having a great time with incorporating, their OT skills and fusing that in with their passions, right? And the
Yeah.
things that, they very much care about too. So I'm guessing that you grew up with horses, you're working with goats and other animals. So this is just the kind of environment that, you love to be in on an everyday basis.
Yeah, I mean, I collected all of the animals, as a kid, whatever I could have. I was always, can I have this? Can I have that? Anything that stray came along. I raised a couple of possums. Their mama got hit on the road, and I came home with them in a box, and my parents were like, uh-uh. And I was like, but I have to. So this ability to see that children connect so well with animals. There are so many children that connect with animals, and we've really found in the last few years that so many children who are struggling with mental health and are struggling, returning to school and getting back to, the usual, that ability to connect with animals can be such a game changer for them. So I have my more traditional training in hippotherapy, which is really that movement base. It's what a lot of people think about is the child that has CP that really benefits from the movement and the core strength piece. But majority of my caseload is not those kids. And it's not even the
Mm.
children with autism anymore for the sensory integration piece. Like I would say the
Hmm.
progression was the very traditional types of clients that were physical disabilities based. Then it was like for my own career, a lot of children with autism and
Hmm.
that sensory integration piece. And now in the evolution is really so many children with mental health challenges, and that ability to connect and bond to the animals has been a huge piece of their recovery, a huge piece of them getting back to environments that they can feel comfortable in.
Just absolutely love that they're getting that service, right? That they're getting that need met. Um, this might be a good time for us to segue. And I know you've described a little bit already some of your population, but
Hmm.
yes, would you mind describing for us your uncommon OT work, whom you serve, and yeah, some of the needs that you're addressing?
Yeah, so in our uncommon OT work, we're a private practice that incorporates animals and aquatics. So primarily hippotherapy, the horses, and then aquatic OT, but we also have our therapy goats and some outdoor nature-based sessions. And the types of clientele we serve is pediatrics up to young adults. So we do see young adults as well. So as they go through that transition from 21 to 25 and are transitioning out of the school systems, there really is a lack of activities and support services.
Hmm.
So through early school age up through 5 to 25 is probably the majority of clientele that we see, and the diagnosis right now tend to range primarily on the mental health side of things. And so we see kids with anxiety, with depression, with OCD, with then kind of more the typical things of ADHD and autism as well, and then some developmental disabilities, but it's quite a range.
So I want to hear more about, a typical session and what that might look like for some of the clients that you serve. But can we take a step back and tell us a little bit about your OT background and sort of how you came into, I know you've always had the love for horses, so
Hmm.
hippotherapy seems like the natural route, and then sprinkling in, the helping profession in there, that being OT. So once you became an occupational therapist, what was, or tell us a little bit about, yeah, the progression from there to currently now, where you have your private practice.
Yeah. I love looking back at that like new clinician stage. And I've kept some of my treatment plans to share with when I take fieldwork students so I can show
Hmm.
them like this is what it used to look like. So what you see today is not like, don't expect to be where I am, where you are today. Like this is what my treatment plan written out looked like when I first got started. And those beginning stages were very much that biomechanical model, NDT and kinesiotape, and looking at a lot of that component. And then I focused on getting certified in sensory integration. And that also tied into the DIR floor time model. And so that really became a big part of my lens. It became a big part of how I see and interact and work with a lot of the clients and families that
Hmm.
we work with today. And kind of sprinkled, I would say, in there was the connections I made with the American Hippotherapy Association to then become faculty and then eventually to become faculty in an occupational therapy assistant program. And, part of that process was my program director. He said, well, one of my classmates was your first fieldwork student, and she just talked, and I was like, man, I'm old enough that like your classmate was my fieldwork student. So it was a funny like that you there's no way I could have known all those many, many, many years ago when I took that first
Yes.
fieldwork student that like someone who was in her cohort would eventually become my boss. Like there's just no way to like plan that. But
No.
he's like, oh, when I saw your resume, like your name jumped out at me because I remembered her talking about you and it was a non-traditional setting. And so I have like the academic side where I'm teaching about hippotherapy or I'm teaching in the OTA program, and then, running our private practice with my husband, who's a coda.
Oh, I love it. Well, it's a small world, it seems, OT and hippotherapy, and that makes it even smaller.
Yes.
It's so niche. So I would imagine, that these types of things would happen. But yeah, I'm glad that you shared that, you and your husband are sort of a team in your private practice. And I
Hmm.
think we have a few listeners out there who are also, partner teams in their entrepreneurial endeavors. So don't, hesitate to share any tidbits here and
Oh,
there
yeah.
about that experience if you're okay with it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like working with your husband i- in both the good and the bad, because it's like
Yeah.
we never get away from work because we
Yeah.
are always talking about like, oh, did you like did you see this continuing education thing? Oh yeah, here, take a look at this. And what am I going to do with my client later? I don't know. Did you try this? And now our kids do it. They'll be like, hey mom, I made this activity for you to use. I think it would be good with one of your clients. And like my daughter had cut out all these shapes and like colored them, and she came down with all in like a plastic bag. She's like, you should use it for therapy today. So,
Uh-oh, an OT in the making.
there's no hope for them. They can't escape it.
OT in the making. But yeah, maybe now we can segue into like a typical day for, you two and your business and what that might look like. And then maybe give us a little glimpse into a typical session.
Yeah. So I think one of the things when you think of children and animals, there is no typical, right? It's like you never know what you're going to get because the animals bring their own energy and like what they've
Mm-hmm.
been through for the day, and the children bring their own energy and what they've been through the day. And it's one of the reasons why I love dynamic systems as a theory, because it's like you have the children and that the child in that system, whatever they're going on and going on with them. We have the horse or the goat, whatever's going on
Mm-hmm.
with them. Then I come in with my system and energy. And
Mm-hmm.
like, can I be the co-regulator? Is my horse going to be the co-regulator? Because maybe my horse is in a really good place and they're feeling really mellow. And then I have a horse handler. So like their system, right? If they came late and they're rushed, or, if they've been there
Mm-hmm.
an hour and they're really calm and they're really zen, like, so now we have all these systems working together. And,
Yeah.
I'm always cognizant of the fact that that child's system can spin up the horse and then it becomes this like escalating situation here. So,
Mm-hmm.
a typical day for us looks like, hopefully, usually we get up, we have breakfast together with our kids, we do our homeschool lesson in the morning. And then depending on whose day it is, it's prepping for sessions. So, we're printing out our stuff, we're getting our stuff together, we're loading up the vehicle because we are mobile at different community facilities. So we're not at the
Mm-hmm.
same facility every day, but we're loading up the vehicle with like whatever we've planned out and need for the day. And then we're getting on site, usually half an hour, 45 minutes early, so we can check to make sure everything is as we would expect it to be for that day, because that's
Mm-hmm.
never a guarantee when it's not your own facility. And, sometimes you don't know necessarily what you're going to walk into as far as, is a horse lame and you didn't like the staff didn't communicate like, hey, Goldie's not available today. And now then it's like, okay, well now I need to see like what is my backup activity or choice? Is there another appropriate horse? And then it's just
So
prepping. Go
is
ahead.
this facility like a stable or a farm?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I work at two different farms. One is a typical able-bodied riding stable that gives riding
Okay.
lessons to the public and the community. And the other one is an adaptive horseback riding facility that's a nonprofit that specializes in serving people with disabilities. So, two different one is a for-profit company, one is a nonprofit company, and
Mm-hmm.
different models, different horses, different advantages to being at each one.
Absolutely. Wow. So fascinating. So then well, go ahead. I want you to continue and I'll save my questions for after. You're
Yeah, so
talking
then
about
then
a
it,
typical session.
yeah, you're into setup, and depending on how many clients you have that are coming, it's typically about a 45-minute session. If you have some younger kids or kids that have more involvement, might be 30 minutes, or sometimes it might be as long as an hour. And so a
Mm-hmm.
portion of that time we're on the horse or with the horse, and then a portion of that time we're doing what would be considered more traditional therapy activities, or we're integrating the movement and what we've been working on with the horse into another type of activity, on the ground or out in nature or in an activity room. So it just depends. Again, each facility kind of offers a little bit of a different options in
Mm-hmm.
in what that integration piece looks like. But no one is going home with a horse at the end of the day, so they have to be functional after that movement piece.
Got it. So I'm imagining sort of a farm-like setting.
Hmm.
And then it's you, the handler, and then the client. And
Hmm.
an activity could be they're actually on the horse, kind
Hmm.
of doing things. And what are some, aside from, the typical core strength and balance, what are some other, I know you mentioned a lot of your kids are sort of experiencing mental health types of issues. What types of interventions are you doing to address some of those?
Yeah, so we're working with a lot of co-regulation, sensory processing, interoception, and tuning into those internal feelings. And then we use the horse as a model a lot of times, as if the horse is excited, right? We can talk
Hmm.
about what body language do we see, or if the client is really wiggly and moving around, then the horse is going to give us some body language that maybe they don't like that. And
Hmm.
so we can kind of play off of what the horse is communicating into, is that client able to pick up those nonverbal signals? What do they think it means? How would they interpret it? And then what do they feel in their own body? Have they experienced something similar? So we do a lot of narration in between the movement piece. So in my brain, I'm orchestrating two separate things. So I'm orchestrating the movement of the horse with the horse handler.
Uh-huh.
I need more movement, I need more sensory input, I need more vestibular input. We're going to do a circle, we're going to do a start stop, like, and so we're having that conversation, but then I have a separate piece that's me and the client, and that's that narration piece, that's that back and forth. And I'm watching them very closely to see, are they becoming more regulated? Are they able to follow this conversation? Are they starting to become dysregulated? Is it too much movement? Do I have to slow down? Do I have to do some
Mm-hmm.
straight lines? And so you're kind of bouncing back and forth between, two types of language, because
Yes.
our horse handler language is spoken kind of one way, and if you've been with a horse handler for a long time, you get a shorthand. So you don't have to say as many words because you don't want to
Ah,
interrupt your flow with the client.
yeah.
And then,
Almost
and
like
then,
code.
yes. Yeah.
Got
So
it.
a good horse handler will get to know you, and then you have your shorthand, and it saves you a lot. So when it's like whenever you have a new team member come on, the amount of just literal language you have to use to get what you need is so much longer. It's more like
Yes.
on the therapist load, it's much more processing. There's more interruption, there's more switching back and forth. So
Yeah. Sounds like you need to be somewhat very in sync about even body language and direction. And can you give us an example of what it might look like if a child were to work with a goat this time?
yeah.
Because I'm super curious about that.
So our goats do a variety of different things, including coming to the park with us, wearing a harness and a leash. And they can be carrying a backpack with some of our activities for the day. Goats are very naturally curious. And so one of our favorite activities to do with our goats with a relatively new client, so someone who's, within their first 6 sessions with us, is we do an activity called Yum Yuck. And so we have a chart that they look for plant identification in the environment, and then they bring it up to the goat to see if the goat likes it. And so it gets a yummy face, or if the goat doesn't like it, it gets a yucky face. And then we talk about things that they like and they don't like. And so we take that into that sensory realm of like, what's a yum for you? What's something that's
Mm-hmm.
really yummy for you, for your body, if you're moving, or what's something really yummy that you like to see? And what's a yuck? Like, what are the things that you just really don't like? They don't feel good to you. And so the goat, again, is that like helper in opening that conversation instead of just like, so what don't you really like about like what's really icky for you? So many of our
Uh,
kids, they just shut down. They're not going to have that
yeah.
conversation with you. But when Evie the goat is like spitting something out and they don't like it at all, then it's a much easier like, oh, look, she really doesn't like that. Ew.
Yes. Oh, I love that. So would this be considered animal assisted therapy?
Yep.
Probably in its purest form, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so sometimes clients will come and interact with the goats free range. And so the goats are loose in their pasture. They're going to come and go as
Mm-hmm.
they see fit, as they feel the energy of either the child or the group. So sometimes we run groups in that same setting. And so the goats will kind of come in and they'll kind of come out. And it's interesting to just watch and see like, when are they coming in and interacting with the clients? When are they coming in and hanging out with the group? And then when something in that dynamic changes, right? And then they leave that space and they'll just like ignore them. They'll go eat and they'll go get some grass or whatever. And then seeing what the client is going to do to entice them and bring them back into that circle, that activity. And because they're so curious, right? They're always looking to see like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So how large are these groups typically when you have them?
So with the children, our groups tend to be fairly small with 3 to 6 children. But we
Okay.
do run some adult mental health like support groups, and those will be up to 20.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about those support groups and what that might look like?
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a partnership with already established support groups that want to do something than like their regular meeting. And what we
Mm-hmm.
do is I coordinate with a point person who's going to advertise it, share it within their group and handle that side of things. And I'll kind of pitch an idea that fits within their theme. So think like your AA, NA, Alcoholics Anonymous,
Mm-hmm.
Narcotics Anonymous, right? Those types of support groups.
Got it.
And so the group members will come and I will facilitate the first beginning of that meeting. The group member will introduce me, what my role is as an occupational therapist. We'll facilitate the beginning of that meeting. We'll usually have a work group. So we're incorporating some of the Shinrin Yoku, the forest bathing, like sit spot. But then the goats are coming in and interacting with the participants in that experience. And again, I usually give like a workbook so they can kind of journal through that experience. And
Mhm.
then when we come to a closure with that, I leave them for them to have the rest of their meeting as they typically would in another setting. And the goats just like hang out, right? It's like the goats
Oh,
are going to be there for the rest of their meeting. And then when they're all done, when the group is all done with their meeting, their point person will come and get me so I can make sure everything with the goats is taken care of and all the gates are locked and everything. So it's a totally different model, right, with that.
oh my gosh. Sounds like a beautiful space, honestly. I'm visualizing just a wide pasture and just animals roaming about and, it being very green. And again, when you mentioned forest bathing, that just invigorated me. So it sounds
Yeah.
like a really therapeutic environment. How does it work with, I know you talked about being in a couple of different facilities. Are you hired by the facilities or do you pay rent or you lease space at the
Yes.
facilities? Okay.
Yes. So we lease space at different facilities. That way, we are providing our own services within our own LLC, and we are responsible for the provision. The clients are ours, the payment is ours, and we pay to use that facility. We pay, and so depending on the facility, depends on exactly what the contract includes. And so
Mm-hmm.
whether that's a pool use fee for renting a lane in the pool, or a facility use fee that includes the arena, the horse handler, like access to the facility, right? It could include a lot or it can
Mm-hmm.
include a little.
Yes. So that's probably where it helps to lease space through that facility that offers services like adapted riding.
Hmm. Yeah, and definitely I direct some families to that facility because they have a ramp. And so if
Yeah.
the person has some mobility impairments or it's a teenager and maybe they're going to have a little bit of a harder time getting on the horse, like being able to walk up the ramp where it's nice and tall and just put their leg over is easier
Yes.
on the horse. It's easier on me, like my own biomechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And the other facility doesn't have that yet, but that's in the works.
Got it. Wow. So I know you're in New Jersey. Not sure if our listeners know that.
Hmm.
How easy was it to find these facilities? Yeah, are they, I'm imagining there aren't too many adapted riding facilities out there, or maybe there are.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is one of the things that so many therapists who are interested in hippotherapy get hung up on because they're like, well, I don't own a farm. How am I going to do
Yeah.
this? Like, you know, and it's just it's a huge misconception that unless you own a farm or unless you own a horse, this isn't an area that you can practice in. And I don't own a horse at the moment. I did, but I don't now. And I don't own a farm. I do own a couple acres where the goats are. That's at our house. But finding facilities that you can contract with has, I mean, especially because we have three young children. And so
Hmm.
not being in charge of a farm with 6 to 8 horses is really important for us right now. And
Yes.
there are quite a few adaptive horseback riding path certified facilities in our area. And I probably talked with about 20 facilities before I found good connection. So it was like, you know, email reaching out and then site visits and then discussions around contracts and scheduling before you
Hmm.
finally got to like finding the right partners because you have to find that right fit. And so
Yeah.
even if there are a lot of stables in your area, they may not be the right fit. Or you may have the opposite. You may not have a lot of stables in your area, but finding just one that is the right fit makes all
Hmm.
the difference.
Got it. Do you usually work with multiple horses on a given day? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so because each client will have an individual sensory need, they're going to have different ability to accommodate the width, so how round or fat the horse is. Um, like a little itty bitty kid's not going to be able to be in good, proper alignment on a big round pony, right? I might need
Yeah.
something that's a little bit more narrow. So I need to have a range. So usually about 4 is a minimum. So 4
Mm-hmm.
horses to choose from that have medical quality equine movement, they have good temperament, and they have that ability to interact with us is a starting place. So if the facility doesn't have that, then that's also a pass.
Well, it seems like that's hopeful news for our listeners that,
Yeah.
if, yeah, if you just need to look around a little bit and connect with the right people, but
Mhm.
um, you don't have to have your own
You
farm.
don't, no?
Yeah, but you do have the goats. The goats are yours,
Yes, the goats are ours. Goats are
and they're in
ours.
your, and they offer, do you bring them over to these facilities or do the folks go to them?
So our goats we take to our nature-based setting at a park, and then sometimes we have clients that actually come to our property and work with them here. So kind of just depends on what the activity is of the day, whether the goats are hopping in the vehicle and going with us, or whether people are coming to us.
Wow, well, they're so versatile and just, able to, yeah, serve any which way they can. I absolutely love that. And I'm also like, I keep asking about the goats because our listeners do not see this, but you have a beautiful painting of a goat behind you. And that's actually how we started talking about Evie, right? Is that Evie?
This is Auntie Maggie, but Maggie and Evie are 2 current goats right now. So
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing what it might be like to work with, either of them.
mhm.
They just really sound like special sessions. And, I'm so happy that you're making this available to some folks. And maybe we can now segue into a little bit about that, right? Reimbursement, money matters. How do folks avail of your services and how are these services paid for?
Yeah. We are private pay, so families pay us directly. We do work with a couple granting agencies for families who can't afford to pay directly out of pocket. And then we run some other kind of low cost types of activities to make sure that people have an opportunity to interact with our animals to get to know us as well. And that has worked fairly well for us. And one of our business mottos between my husband and I is keep things simple. Right? Keep it
Mm-hmm.
simple. And for us, insurance reimbursement definitely does not fit into that model. We don't have a ton of time to sit down and call for if somebody has a pre-authorization and how many visits and what the reimbursement rate is going to be. And then, if I have been down this road before and, it's only, I spent so many hours one time on a phone call because the child's diagnosis code didn't match the eval. And I was like, are you telling me a child with this diagnosis can't have an OT eval? Well, no, that's not what we're saying. And it was like 4 calls over the course of 3 months to find out that it was a point zero 0.01 on the diagnosis instead of a point 0.1. So it was a 5-digit diagnosis code, not a 4-digit diagnosis code. And of course, no one at the insurance company can tell you that.
It was a typo, really.
Well, the codes had been updated like from 2017 to 2019 or something. And so it had an extra,
Oh,
yeah. And they couldn't
oh
just tell me
boy.
that the first time I called, like, check your diagnosis code.
So that deterred you from working with insurance ever again,
Well,
or,
that's definitely one factor. We also found that a lot of what our families were asking for wouldn't be considered medically necessary.
mm,
So it might be social skills support. It might be their ability to interact at home with their siblings or be able to go to a grocery store and not have a meltdown over not getting a toy. And, those were really important things to the family. Insurance looks at that and they're like, well, that's not medically necessary. Like they don't need to
yeah.
do that. And we've had that with some of our adolescents and teenagers too, where we're starting to work more on IADLs and even with out of network coverage, in some cases, the feedback we got was not about our intervention tools, which that's a whole nother part of the reimbursement issue is that when
Mm-hmm.
you are working outside the box and you're incorporating hippotherapy or aquatics or animals, there's often a lot of exclusions. So like that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But even just on the straight OT goal side of things, we would get feedback that, that goal isn't medically relevant. It's not
Hmm.
medically relevant that they can navigate in the community.
It sounds awfully time consuming. And, you say 16, but you also talked about the kids who've sort of aged out of
Hmm.
services and how
Yeah.
there's sort of this gap of services that, are really, really needed for this population because they're sort of transitioning into sort of different
What?
environments,
Yeah.
different lives, right? Like just and how you're able to sort of support that group.
Yeah. The young adults, if they aren't going into like a supported employment, a lot of times they're spending a lot of time at home, and that can lead to increased frustration. It can lead to more either sensory sensitivities because they aren't getting out and interacting as much. And so if
Mm-hmm.
they were already a sensory sensitive person, then
Yes.
their family starts to find that they're becoming more sensory sensitive, and it gets harder to get out in the community. Or if they're more on that sensory seeker side of things and they're not getting out and moving and doing all the things that they were doing in a school-based environment, that they're much more frustrated at home, and there's just not that outlet there. So we found that working with the young adult population, that opportunity to get out, to move your body, to be socially interactive with others has been
Mm-hmm.
a huge benefit. And I think also giving the parents that chance to have some respite and have a break has
Yeah,
been really valuable for them as well.
I'm sure. How are referrals? What is your biggest source of referrals?
Facebook.
Fascinating.
Facebook. Yeah, I mean, I've tried the traditional referral route of contacting doctors and pediatricians. New Jersey is a direct access state, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore, we can have clients that come directly to us. And so having a presence in the special needs parents groups and sharing if we're going to do like a free sensory Saturday event so people can come out and meet us, and if somebody posts like, my child has ADHD and I'm thinking about getting therapy, popping in and saying like, here's what we do. If this would be of
Mm-hmm.
interest to you, here's my email, like contact us. And running Facebook ads, paid Facebook ads have converted really well for us as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And just I think you were already networking even before your business
Hmm.
um, kind of hit off the ground.
Yeah.
You were already, volunteering and also like in your faculty work. I think, that also was just like a natural way. But interesting that social media has just been such a it's just been such a helpful tool for us OTs to really get the word out there and
Yeah.
to, let folks know about how we can help.
Yeah, we've had a number of clients that have never received services like for anything before. They may not have a definitive diagnosis, but the families are really struggling. And then when we do a comprehensive eval and we see there's, some significant sensory issues, there's issues with executive function and attention. And
Hmm.
so then we can come back to the family and say, like, look, here's the executive function scales. There's some pretty significant issues here. And this is an area we can support you in.
Wow. I'm sure they're super grateful for that support, especially if they've never really worked with a clinician with our lens before,
Hmm.
right? And really seeing how executive functioning is translating itself to, this young person's everyday life and kind of painting that picture for the parents who
Yeah.
are sometimes just so desperate to kind of find out what's going on or, figure out a way for them to help.
Right. It's that, they know something's not working right. And often if they have other children, they're like, this child is different and we don't know what to do. Like we've tried all the things and they don't seem to be working. And so, now we're really stuck. And
Hmm.
we heard about or we saw your Facebook post, and a lot of times is my kid's really into animals, and
Yes.
and I'm interested.
So I would love to share do you have a Facebook page that we can share with our listeners so they can kind of take a glimpse at, how you're
Yeah.
able to kind of advertise your work? I think that's also, the marketing end of things is something that we're also, not too confident about as a profession because we're not
Yeah.
used to talking about ourselves and how we can help.
And
We're talking,
our schooling, like
yes,
we don't get any support there. So it's like you really do have to learn it by the seat of your pants. And so, yes, our business Facebook page would be Hippotherapy Services, name of our business.
fantastic. So we're going to list that for sure. Great. Thanks for, all of those little details. Folks are paying out of pocket.
Hmm.
You're getting referrals. You're getting referrals through social media. You're getting referrals through word of mouth.
Hmm.
That's all excellent news. As far as the cost of your services is concerned, would you mind sharing with us, just not to be exact, or if you have a pricing, just again to get an idea of what what are people willing to pay for the services that you're offering, maybe an evaluation and what the services look like. How often are folks
Hmm.
usually in treatment? Is it the typical, twice or three times a week? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, frequency, duration, right? All the good stuff. And also kind of like lifetime client value or the amount of services that we would provide for one client over the course of time that we were going to see them. So our average family over the course of time that we're going to see them usually spends about $3,000 with us. So that's kind of their average for the amount of time that we're going to see them. Our typical frequency and duration is one time a week for 45 minutes. Our nature-based sessions tend to run a little bit longer, and our aquatics may run a little bit shorter just because they tend to get tired a little bit more quickly in the pool. And so the range would be from like $60 to $120. And then depending on which facility you would be at, there's a facility fee. And so the
Mm-hmm.
facility fee is what the facility is charging to us for the use of that space. And so that's our addition to the OT rate. So our OT rate is flat no matter which setting you see us in. So if you come
Mm-hmm.
to the pool, if you come to the barn, and we do have clients that will come to different settings, or if they're absent one day at one setting, they can come and see us the other day at the pool.
Got it.
And so then the facility fee changes depending on where you're at. If it's nature-based, there is no facility fee because nature is free to
Ah,
all of us, and so
yeah.
that can vary it as well.
Okay. Is the facilities fee expensive?
So $15 to $30 per session.
Okay, so thank you for the details. Yeah, and again, this is what you get for it, right? And I
Yeah,
just think that's incredible. Yeah,
yeah,
personally, I feel like it's just a different kind of service that, again, you're filling this gap. Some folks are not even, how can they possibly avail of these services if they
yeah,
weren't, a part of that Facebook page, right? Because it's not something that folks necessarily refer people
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So it's wonderful. Thank you for that. If you had any other, because I know you've been sprinkling it here and there, career advice for other occupational therapy practitioners out there who are thinking about going down your path, do you have any advice for them?
I do. I really do. Get your feet wet first. Don't spend the money first. Don't get your feet wet first because it's often not what people think it is. If we look at social media and we look at people's Instagram accounts and it's, cute ponies with cute kids on a sunny day outside and it's absolutely beautiful, or it's, nature based and someone's swinging in a tree and everyone's smiling, or, kids are splashing in the pool and it's just like a beautiful water and it's just that's the picture. But that's not the
Yeah.
reality of it. It's like the horses are miserable and there's flies and the flyers are just like it's hot and you're walking around
Mhm.
in the sun and the kid is having a bad day and they're having a meltdown and they have a helmet on and they're above you slightly with the helmet and they're having a bad time and they're going to headbutt you with the helmet because that's like the trajectory of like being
Yes.
in and then you have to like okay, we need to like safely get them off so we can keep the team safe. Like things happen and things
Hmm.
happen with kids and animals and these environments. And so find someone to spend some time with. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be an adaptive horseback riding lesson. It could be an adaptive swimming lesson. Like it could be a nature-based school,
Yes.
but get in that setting
Yeah.
and hang out. Do it, volunteer, whatever you shadow, intern, whatever it is. Get your feet wet first to find if this is something that you really want to do
Yes.
before you start to take because I think we all love the certifications. We all love the continuing education. And
Oh, yeah.
if you're just doing it for because you want to know about it, that's cool. But if you're doing it because you think that you want to go into this area of practice, like hands-on, it has to be like hands-on. You have to get your hands dirty. Literally, you have to get your hands dirty to experience it and then say like, okay, is this something I really think that I want to do? So that's always my initial advice. Make sure you get out there, get your hands dirty, get into that
Yeah.
environment as much as you can before you take the next step.
That is great advice. So finding somebody to volunteer with or shadow, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, because you do see all of these photos and everybody's having a great time. And when you painted that little picture for us, I kind of was nodding my head and thought, yeah, that sounds more like a treatment session. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
again, there's also all the benefits like working outdoors if you love being, under the sun to
There are
also
glorious moments
consider.
to it. There really are. There are absolutely beautiful moments, and the sun is setting and you're walking around and you can hear the birds, and like the kid is telling you this amazing story, or they're really well regulated, and you see like everything come together, and you're matching pace with the horse, and you're getting your like mile. In general, I walk 1 mile per session, and so it's like I'm getting my mile in, I'm moving my body, like everything's like we're all on the same page. It really is amazing, but that's not the every, it's not the every session, not the every day.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your examples. I really just have had such a great time chatting with you about your work. If our listeners are interested in getting in touch, and I know part of your work, and I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but part of your work is really training other OTs and
Hmm.
specializing in your work.
Yeah. So I have my work with the American Hippotherapy Association where I teach the curriculum, and that is really the clinical side of things. And then I run my own program, which is like an 8-week business boot camp for those people who want to get their business started in a barn. And it's business barn raising. And because I struggled through a lot of those steps and, trying to figure it all out. And I figured, well, if I'm struggling through this, there's probably some other people that I could help make fewer steps to go through. And, it's helped the OTs and a couple of PTs and speech language pathologists that I've worked with really figure out, how to do it in their part of the country, because every part of the country is so different. Like the horse world in different parts of the country is really, really different. And so
Hmm.
being able for people to figure out like, oh, well, I'm in the Western United States, like what types of facilities am I most likely going to connect with out here, which might be
Hmm.
different than the East Coast and like
Yeah.
what that might look like. So it's a good way to help people who really do want to get to do it, but don't own facility. Or if you do own your own facility and you're like, okay, like how do I get these horses into therapy? That's
Yeah.
some of the other people who have questions.
Well, thank you so much for making yourself available to, not only OTs, but other clinicians or anyone who wants to sort of get into this kind of work. We're definitely going to post all of your contact information and your course. I know that this is an area in occupational therapy that folks are just super interested in, and I know that there's also a lot of questions. Is there one other last request of you is can you explain to us the difference or compare and contrast hippotherapy versus equine therapy or equine assisted or facilitated therapy?
The terminology is a hot mess. And so the first part is we typically lead with our profession first. So we say, I am an occupational therapist. And then we might say specializing in hippotherapy or specialize or, incorporating horses. And so then to break it down, so hippotherapy, hippos is Greek for horse. And it means, therapy with the help of the horse. And hippotherapy is specifically referring to the movement of the horse. the movement piece. Equine assisted therapy is referring to activities with the horse, the environment with the horse. They may or not be on the horse. They could be on the horse, but you might not be focused on the movement. You might be doing like a game or an activity, but it's not really about the movement. And then equine therapy is someone who's doing therapy to the horse. So we have PTs and stuff who are helping the horses, right? Horses with injuries. And so they're doing therapy to the horse. The equine facilitated therapy tends to be on the mental health side of things. So that term tends to be used by mental health clinicians.
Got it. And there, the equine is facilitating the therapeutic process.
Yeah, and there's some change kind of going on in the terminology with that as well, looking at being more therapy-led and starting to come with the therapy first, rather than saying that the horse is truly facilitating something, which, from a reimbursement and a research standpoint is questionable.
And of course, equine assisted therapy is more specific, but would that fall under the animal assisted therapy verbiage too? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for clearing some of that for us. Or at least
it's about as clear as mud.
So thanks again for just spending the time with me tonight, talking about your work. I'm so proud of, what you've been able to accomplish over there. And you have this thriving LLC and partnership with your partner. And and really just have some very inspiring words for other occupational therapy practitioners out there who are really might be interested in, venturing out into your specialty. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful conversation.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Uncommon OT series. Connect with me at www.transitionsot.com. And don't forget to sign up to be part of the Transitions OT community. By doing so, you'll receive my latest compiled list of uncommon OT practice settings, the latest news on mentoring offerings, uncommon OT live events, non-traditional OT resources, and more. You may also follow me on my social media pages on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you love this episode, head on over to Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts to follow, rate, and leave a review. I also ask you to consider pledging your support to my Passion Podcast project by being a patron on Patreon. It is very much appreciated. Sending big OT love. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.